Hello students, welcome to a chess strategy lesson where you will learn very important concepts which are must know to become good player. This lecture is very well suited for beginners and intermediate level players as I chose the most simple game possible to illustrate the main ideas. However, these same concepts are used in complicated positions against titled players as well. If this video gets enough interest, I will produce part 2 where I will show how these are used against very strong players in much more difficult positions. Now let's take a look at the position in front of you. It's white to play. What would you play here and why? One of the first things that we notice is that our bishop on f4 is hanging. I always tell my students that in the face of a threat, the first thing they should look for is counterattack. This is a habit that we all once had when we were beginners, that whenever we're getting attacked, we look how to get out of that threat. I would like you to change that. If we're only thinking about whether to take or run away with the bishop, we'd be missing a lot of moves like rook to e1. And once again, I say consider counterattacking. That doesn't mean that you should always be counterattacking, because that's one of the possible sins you could commit as well. Over here, after rook to e1, black is in a lot of trouble because while the knight on e8 is hanging, we're also threatening the checkmate. So they cannot just take on f4 and run away with the king after rook e8 because h7 is covered by the bishop. In the game, king f8 was played, and now you could pause the video and try to execute a tactic for the white pieces. White here can play rook takes e8 and exchange the rook for 2 pieces. Now we're coming to a concept number 2, which is 2 pieces are overwhelmingly much better than the rook. It's almost always winning. In order for the rook to be happy against 2 pieces, they would need to have 2 pawns. In other words, rook plus 2 pawns is okay and even better actually a lot of the times against 2 minor pieces, bishops or knights. In the game, black played knight to d7, and white is having this winning position. However, they have to simplify it even further, and I with the white pieces found the move a6. They're unable to take because my bishop would come into b7 square where I would be threatening the rook and c6 would likely drop. So the move that makes sense is b6, after which I can simplify the position and force the exchange as knight e5 attacks the opponent's knight and the pawn on c6. We had knight takes e5, bishop takes e5, and now we come to the most important part of the video. How to win a winning position. Your thinking has to be ultra prophylactic. It's not about how you're going to win it. It's about how to not give opponent counterplay in the first place. It's as if I'm a piece up. I would like to improve the position of my king, perhaps move it somewhere towards the king side or where the action is going to take place. I'm going to try and maneuver my bishop in order to create threats, improve the pawn structure by pushing, and eventually the black's position should crack somewhere. However, what I would like to do in this game is not allow my opponent's rook to be activated and create counterplay, and same goes for the black's king. They play f6. Let's apply the thinking process detail that we learned at the start of the video. In the face of a threat, we're considering counterattacking moves first. I loved my bishop on f4 over here, and then I noticed that opponents could play g5, which of course is not taking away white's advantage any way, shape or form, but I would like to first give a check in order to block the g-pawn, and I squeezed the maximum out of the position in my eyes. I didn't allow black to create some space on the king side, as well as my bishop will now be covering e8 square, from where the rook may be wanting to enjoy the activity along the only open file in the position. After rook c8, I ask you to pause the video and think, how would you progress here with the white pieces? There are thousands of moves you could make. I would like you just tell me what would be your way of playing this position. And now this is the position where many of my students would actually go wrong. They will start with something like king f1 in order to activate the king and move it to the action. It's absolutely fantastic idea, but not at this particular moment because we're ignoring the black's attack along the c file and their threat of creating counterplay. For example, if we were to play king f1, black would play a move like c5, and say we have takes and takes and takes and takes. An engine would say you didn't even make a single inaccuracy. From human perspective, however, now the rook is active, They could be attacking the c3 pawn, they could be attacking the a6 pawn, there might be some checks, and you activated the rook, which gives them chances. You cannot rely on such technique to win 100% of winning positions. Instead, in the game, I identified that my opponent wants to open up the file, and I played a move bishop to e3. Now, as long as my opponent does not create threats to create counterplay, I'm going to improve my position, and one of the things that I'm going to improve is definitely going to be the king. They played rook to d8, I failed to identify any kind of threat, and that's when I moved the king to f1. They played the move b5, I don't see an idea behind it, time to improve my position, I move king e2. After king d7, I would like you to pause the video and try to figure out what would you play here with the white pieces. Always think prophylaxis first in the winning position, because you are trying to preserve your advantage rather than acquire one. You're already a piece up, therefore you're winning. The right move here, or the move that I played, was bishop to f4, preventing my opponent's idea of going towards the a pawn. As you could see, even if they go king c8, these squares remain covered, and my opponent doesn't have any counterplay. They play king e7, I failed to identify any threat, I move towards the king side. They play king e6, wanting perhaps to play f5, I play king to g4, they play rook f8, wanting to play f5, I play bishop f5, and now little by little I managed to get my king into a perfect position. Of course my opponent isn't playing perfect, but he was quite a good player, it's just that the position is very bad, and if white plays well, there is no chance here. Even if I played engine, to be honest, from this position, I would win 10 out of 10 games. In this position, my opponent played king f8, then I increased the scope of my bishops, and finally they blundered. After bishop d6, the game is coming to an end, as the only move for them is rook to e7, and black resigned. As you saw, once I got a winning position, I took away all counterplay from my opponent, and I could rely on such technique to convert way higher percentage of winning positions. Consider hiring me as your personal online chess coach if you enjoyed the video. Thank you for watching. Let me know if you would like to see second part on the same concept. See you in the next class.